This sitting is resumed. Prior to the suspension, this House was in Standing Finance Committee. We return to Standing Finance Committee.
This House is in Standing Finance Committee. Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I defer, sir. Nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Minister, I will now fill this slot. Deferred to me by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. I want to find out from you what the performance of the trust loans has been. This has been a very, is a very integral part of business development, and a number of persons out there, in particular from the constituency of St. Lucie, have benefited from this project run by your ministry. And persons are asking every day, how? So I want to share information about how you can be part of this. What is the process? What has been the success of this agency so far, the trust loans, and how really you can benefit from such? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I am joined from the trust loans by Mr. Jerry Amos, and I'm going to invite him in a few moments to follow on from my initial response to the question. Now, Mr. Chairman, I mentioned just before we broke about the development of the launch of, the finalization of an MSME strategy and policy for Barbados, which we have just completed. The access to capital, the ability to access capital, is one of the issues that was identified in that strategy as we engaged with a broad cross-section of stakeholders. People want to be able to have more than a single source of income. People want to be able to go into business. People need to be able to have seed capital. In many instances, as a part of that strategy, there is an entire pillar in that strategy dedicated to the formalization of the business activity in the business sector. And so people want to be able to have access to a bank account and to be able to access credit. The trust loans, as it was designed for exactly all of those things. And so over the last several years, the trust loans has continued to provide loan capital, starting with, in the initial stages, $5,000 for those persons who particularly are in the informal sector, have never had a bank account, they have an idea, they want to begin to get into business, and they have come for the initial seeding of their business. Then, once successful and want to repay, they can come back again to further scale a business with a second incarnation, this time at $10,000. And over the last 5 years, we've been able to see how that has evolved. From 2020 to 2025, and I can share some data, on average, we have seen the capital being disbursed for on-lending by the trust loans is around the vicinity of $2 million, $2.1 million in 1 year, $3.4 million in another year, $2.3 million in another year, $2.251 in another year, and at its lowest year, only because the year has not yet been completed in 2024, $1.998, just under $2 million in disbursements. We have the allocation by male and female, by sector, agriculture, cultural industries, manufacturing, retail. We have a heavy concentration, especially in the retail and in the services sector and in the tourism sector. In this last financial year, Mr. Chairman, I believe we had the World Cup, for example, and many of these small business persons who have had the benefit of trust loans, and yes, of course, fund access, benefited from just down the road from here, Broad Street being closed off for the first time in its history for a mall, where small business people, alongside the biggest merchants in the country, were able to come and showcase their wares several Saturdays and to be able to have the opportunity for business. Mr. Amos is going to come and he's going to share how we now have a satellite office in St. Peter, very close to your constituency, Honourable Member, to support the accessibility of persons to come and engage with the trust loans. And then we also are in the process, every single month you can see a pop-up emerging where you have the ability to showcase the wares. And then the final thing that I would say is that fund access, trust loans, together with Export Barbados, have also been investing, and BNSI, in the Manufest program, which is about helping the constituents of the members of this honorable chamber, not just to access capital, but to also have the opportunity then just not to showcase the capital, but to export. And one of the clients, several of the clients just came back actually from New York, where they were under the support of Export Barbados, and they started in trust loans to be able to build their business. So if you were to ask, Mr. Chairman, how is the program going? I would have to say that it is doing exactly what it was intended to do in creating opportunities for those in the informal sector to come into the formal space and benefit from not just capital, but business development resources. I'm going to ask Mr. Jerry Amos if he can continue from there.
Thank you very much, Minister. The name Jerry Amos, CEO of the Barbados Trust Fund Limited. Honourable members, good afternoon. Honourable Member Phillips, MP Phillips. It's so interesting to hear that coming from you, praising the trust fund, because only recently, as we had our community events, I realized that we had missed St. Lucie. And when I look back at the year 2020 and our performance in that year, I know that majority of our clients came from St. Lucie and they are performing extremely well. Now, what we have done, as the Minister mentioned, is that for 2025 and 2026, we are rolling out a very aggressive community program. And when I look at the outline that was given to me yesterday with my staff, I realized that St. Lucie and St. Peter, even though those have been passed, that we are going back to those communities to ensure that we go on a road trip, business to business, trying to engage more persons from these parishes to take the opportunity to join the trust fund family. We realized that, as was mentioned, that a lot of persons in communities are not aware of the Barbados Trust Fund Limited, so we found that it's interested that we get out there and take our program to these entrepreneurs to make sure that we help them to enhance their business, not only to come for a loan, but also business development, financial training, and to ensure that these businesses can grow with the help of the ecosystem.
Thank you. Indeed, I'm aware that a number of persons, constituents have benefited tremendously from this, and certainly I will continue to approach you on their behalf and encourage them to approach as well, so that they can benefit from this tremendous project put in place by the government. As a follow, I don't think I heard you explained or how they can, or what they need to do to be able to benefit. What is the process? Can they come directly to you? Go ahead, Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, they do. I'm congratulating the Trust Loans team because in making sure that people feel comfortable coming directly to them, both Trust Loans and Fund Access, they have a business development team, which is there, and they're there to focus on serving client needs. And so oftentimes what you would see in both of these institutions is that clients come, they sometimes come into the lobby of the office or they call and they get connected with an officer who guides them from start to finish. Throughout the life cycle of the loan as well, they have the benefit of the financial literacy training before disbursements, especially at the level of fund access, so that you are not just giving people money, but you're helping them to understand how it is to be applied in their business. There are instances where sometimes a small business may come and they may think they have a given set of needs, but when the business development team works with them in that one-on-one engagement, then they say, well, I actually need this, and I hadn't thought of that, and then that helps to scope the loan. But the one thing that I want to take the time to say here today in celebration of both Fund Access and Trust Loans, Mr. Chairman, is that during COVID, so many of the persons who had gone forward for loans found themselves with business interruption and had difficulties. These teams, these business development teams, these business development officers made it their business in many instances to go out to these businesses and to meet one-on-one with people where they were and to be able to engage with them, so that it meant that you were not just, as Prime Minister likes to say, seeing people, hearing people, but you were also feeling people and identifying what their challenges were and then being in a position to respond to that. Those are the things that we typically don't see all the time, but I want to be able to use this platform to elevate the work that was done by Trust Loans and Fund Access to particularly respond to those persons who were in distress.
Thank you, Minister. My next area that I want to want you to shed some light on, I know you would have spoken a bit to, to vending and the vending zones, etc., and the effort to establish these zones across Barbados. I also know that you are pursuing the setting up of cooperatives and so on within the country as well. I have had the benefit of discussions with officers from your ministry a few weeks ago in relation to that, and persons are a bit, the glass is a bit cloudy in relation to the setting up of these cooperatives. Persons want to know, I have a large farming community. I have a number of small businesses within St. Lucie who would have benefited from the same trust loans that we just spoke about, but would want them to be able to see the importance of cooperatives and so on. So I want you to expand and give us some information on the cooperatives and how you really go about it, and what does it do, what are the benefits in being part of a cooperative.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if Mr. Brent Gittins is in the well or if he's in the gallery, but I'm going to invite him, if not, to begin making his way, because I'm going to pivot to him in a moment. But Chair, thank you for the question on cooperatives. I think, if I can speak frankly, one of the genuine challenges that I think people who look like those of us in this chamber have when dealing with doing business is trusting anyone else. There are communities across this country that they don't call them cooperatives, but they collaborate with others in the development of business ideas and business concepts. They go to commercial institutions, and if you were to use formal terms, spread the risk around with multiple people. They have lawyers, and the lawyer's structure was my share versus was your share. But we do have a culture that is very mistrustful of others when dealing with doing business. And that's really where the work of cooperatives come in. It allows you to spread the risk. It allows you to share the risk with others. It allows you to engage in building economies of scale, economies of scope. You're able to get more with less. Rather than being in charge of 100% of something small, it allows you perhaps to be a part of something much bigger with your share. But especially where different businesses can come together and build on a partnership. So in a farming community, for example, as you've mentioned, Chairman, what are my major areas of expenditure? How could I lower my recurring expenses if I were to come together with a group of others in the same community to invest in procuring equipment and share that equipment across the community? How do I come together to invest in the procurement of pesticides or insecticides, seeds, farming equipment, so that I am able to collaborate, lower my individual costs by sharing those costs with a group of people, and then being in a position to increase my earnings because I've had to outlay less. And so the work of the cooperatives this year, as you have begun to see, is now very community-centered, is heavily sectoral sector focused, and we intend over the course of the year to be able to go from, as we've done in the energy sector, I've spoken about it with grid, with natural gas, and the same thing applies to the business sector of the ministry, specifically co-ops, from St. Lucie, where the discussions have started with you, to St. Peter, where the discussions have already been framed for the member for St. Peter, to St. Thomas, which is happening now, and all the way out to St. Philip and everything in between, so that the entire country is able to benefit from an education on why to participate in a cooperative, what cooperatives exist that they can also be a part of, how can we form new cooperatives, and how can we in the ministry help to support that as part of our business development agenda. That is part of the work of the MSME strategy, and I'm going to ask Mr. Brent Gittins to elaborate a little bit more on the work that he has already started, and even in his small department, he has now taken it national.
Thank you, Minister Cummins. I'm Brent Gittins, Registrar of Cooperatives. And as the Minister said, this year has been designated International Year of Cooperatives by the United Nations General Assembly. And one of the objectives of the year is to spread awareness throughout the diaspora about the benefits of cooperatives and the type of sustainable development that they can cause. So the Cooperatives Department has embarked on a community development program, an outreach program. We actually, a team, and I actually spent some time in St. Lucie recently, where we engaged with a number of small businesses in St. Lucie. And they were, I would say, very open to the idea of working together, because cooperatives is about working together. And we do intend to go into each parish. We are finalizing some spaces and some times for St. Peter and St. Thomas as I speak. So the aim is to create significant public awareness of cooperatives going into each parish and making the diaspora aware that working in groups is always better than working individually. Sometimes we will work with business clusters. A business cluster that we work with was a business cluster that was partnered with the Trust Loan Fund. The Unified Trust Cooperative is now a formal cooperative. So we work with groups, we work with individual entrepreneurs, and the message is that pooling resources together, pooling ideas together, money, is always a better way to go. As the minister said, you can create economies of scale, you can buy in bulk, you can lobby to the government for certain things that you may need. And the process of forming a cooperative is relatively simple. You need 10 persons to form a cooperative. You come and you have some discussions with me and my team, because we like to find out if it is if the business you want to form is viable. And we ensure that you present us with a viable business plan as well before we move forward. So we like to let people come and have some serious discussions with us to find out exactly what type of area they're planning to go into for their cooperative, because a cooperative can be anything. We are actually now in the process of registering a beekeeping cooperative, because the beekeepers have realized that coming together is much better idea than working individually. So I think the cooperative movement will get better and better. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable member, Minister, I will now move to another. My next question is on a different area, but I am going to, since we are into the vending and the setting up cooperatives and so on, I am going to leave that till later and move on to the honourable member for St. James South.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to offer congratulations to the team. A lot of very good work has come forward, and I just have two areas that I want to speak to in relation to some work that you've done. I was very pleased to hear about the MSME strategy and the wonderful things that are going to be done that will help to transform small businesses. And we know that they form the backbone of the economy when you take them all together, and therefore they're very important. So I wanted to hear some more on, if you're at liberty, to share what are some of the things now that will happen for that MSME sector that will help to transform it and help to make them feel a part of the Barbadian prosperity and be able to participate in the opportunities that will be coming the way of our economy.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member, and I know that small business is very close to your heart. And so this is an important conversation that we're happy to facilitate. Now, under the MSME policy and strategy, there were any number of measures that were recommended across a number of pillars and so on, and I want to get into some of these specifics, but let me start first by saying that the last body of work done on the MSME sector as a whole dated back to 2016, where the Small Business Association had a study done by the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute of the University of the West Indies, and I'm sure you are familiar with that study, which looked at the size of the economy. And that study found that close to 98% of the sector of the country, in terms of businesses, were in the micro, small, and medium-sized economy. We had less than 5% of the businesses in the country constituting large-scale enterprises. And so that body of work is dated. And so the Small Business Association, as I speak now, with support from the Central Bank of Barbados, is now undertaking a full assessment of where the MSME sector presently stands, and I want to commend the SBA for continuing to lead the charge and to advocate on behalf of that sector. There were a number of things that were identified in the 2025 policy and strategy for MSMEs. One of those things was skills, the availability of skills, or rather the lack of availability of skills in some of the areas that the MSME sector was interested in. And so we have agreed internal to the ministry from funds which are already under our concern and are captured in these estimates that there will be a skills development program to support the MSME sector in the areas that they identified over the course of the current body of work that is there. In addition, they identified access to capital as one of the challenges, and I spoke earlier about the work of fund access and trust loans. But one of the things that we will be working on during the course of this year is a restructuring and a reform of these two institutions to make them easier, even easier for persons to be able to access. And quite simply, I want to perhaps use one example. If I have gone through trust loans as an entrepreneur, I've started my small business, I've borrowed $5,000, I've come back, I've borrowed $10,000, I've had the benefit of the financial literacy and the business development support. Two agencies under the same ministry and by the same government, what is the relationship between the two? Can I then scale my business by moving on without starting from scratch as if I'd had no previous relationship and go to fund access and be able to use my credit history, which is the reason trust loans was established in the first place, to move seamlessly from one institution on to the next in fund access? How do we then put measures in place to allow for these two institutions, once it is seamless between the two for graduation, not just from 5 to 10, but from institution to institution, how do we then create a relationship where we can structure financial deals and structures with the commercial banking system where we want to be able to increase the appetite for small business development? So access to capital is one of the other areas that we will be seeing. We also have the financial literacy program. When we talk about financial literacy typically for us so far has been concentrated in online, community, and heavily in the schools area. But how do we now have financial literacy rolled out that blends small business development with how to use that capital to grow your business more heavily? How do you then take that into the CSME space, for example, for regional exports? What kind of supporting mechanisms do small businesses need to be able to grow their businesses? One of the things we found, Chair, quite honestly, was that too many businesses were starting small and staying small. And so we want to be able to provide all of the mechanisms to be able to grow it. We have had the approval with support from the Inter-American Development Bank of an enhanced credit guarantee scheme, which exists at the Central Bank of Barbados. That has just been replenished, and that is for the MSME sector. That allows for credit guarantees supported by intermediary banks to go along with these mechanisms. And if I can say that for the energy sector, if I can tie that in, we're very proud, and Delano, he didn't mention it earlier, but we're very proud as well to have launched a carve-out, which is an innovative financial mechanism, which is a liquidity support mechanism within that MSME Enhanced Credit Guarantee Scheme, where if in the energy sector, the utility, for whatever reasons, in an extreme circumstance, is unable to pay these businesses, then they are able to draw down on the liquidity support under the Enhanced Credit Guarantee Scheme. So trying to keep people whole, trying to improve access, and trying to be able to help them to grow. Those are some of the things under the financing pillar alone that we're hoping to do during the course of this year.
Before you continue, Honourable Member for St. James South, I want to acknowledge the presence of the Honourable Minister of State for External Affairs, Pabitra Margarita, who today accepted the honor of the Pride of Barbados, the Freedom of Barbados Award and recognition. He did this on the behalf of President Modi from in India, who, because of their work with the in recognition of India's support for Barbados during the COVID-19 pandemic, and we want to welcome him, the Minister of State for External Affairs, Pabitra Margarita. We want to welcome him here in the House with us today. Thank you. You may proceed, Honourable Member.
As Chair, and I want to personally extend our welcome as well. The other question, very, very happy with what we're looking at with the MSME sector and looking to deal with the critical things that really hold them back. But one of the areas that I've always been concerned about is the area of services. Barbados, whenever we've done studies, it has been noted that we have a potential competitive advantage in services. And therefore, it would seem to me that making more investments in the services industries will be helpful in helping us to broaden from just tourism and financial services, but to be able to pursue other services that can grow because we have people with skills and knowledge, etc. So I want to ask the question. I believe that you mentioned earlier that there's going to be some provision. What I wanted to know is, can you share with us what specific plans for assisting and growing the services sector we can look forward to in this year so that we can see that the services industries can really grow and earn?
So thank you, Honourable Member and Chairman. I'm going to answer the question in two ways. One, there is a dedicated agency in the business support community called the Barbados Coalition of Service Industries. I happen to know the institution quite well. And we have this year, in our estimates of expenditure, increased our allocation to the BCSI so that we can have that institutional strengthening. We have historically, over many years, looked at the question of services across the government in a very disaggregated way. And so you have had the international business unit of this ministry, which looked at financial services specifically, but did not necessarily have an orientation for services more broadly. Then you had the Division of Foreign Trade within the Ministry of Foreign Trade that looked at the export of services. At some point in time in the past, there was a services unit within the BIDC Export Barbados space, and that has evolved. And so we took a determination during the course of this year to do two things. One, since the global supply chain, the UNCTAD Supply Chain Forum in Barbados, we have seen that the international community has moved away from measuring and treating to services as a standalone sector, but a part of the global value and supply chains. And so we have looked at how Barbados can be integrated into those value and those supply chains, and then what are the domestic requirements of services to be able to make that effective. To that end, Chairman, the institutional strengthening for the BCSI is meant to allow for that dedicated focus for the first time now to have government financially supporting BCSI to anchor the services development agenda in the country. So this year, we will see the development of a national services development strategy that is meant to be led by the BCSI with that institutional support. They're also supporting the development of the professional services in a number of areas. There's work that has already started with the Ministry with responsibility for planning, with the construction professionals as well. There's a body of work also on standards in the professions. That body of work is ongoing. And we also are, during the course of this year, specifically under the umbrella of the registration of service providers and the movement of service providers in the CSME, that work is going to be anchored with the BCSI and the Business Barbados agency. So this year, we're going to be moving into that policy development and that execution framework that I have just outlined.
And last question, staying with services, the online presence gives us the capacity to deliver services in a more seamless way without having to move. And I want to know what is going to be done to assist our service providers and yes, our manufacturers as well, to be able to promote what they're doing online, and the possibility of having an e-commerce platform that can help with the settlement of payments and so on. If we could make that happen, the Barbadian economy would boom in a terrific way, because you would be releasing the potential of thousands of MSMEs across the CSME space and beyond.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And Chair, I think You know, you can't divorce one side of the work from another, right? And that's why the question that's been asked by the honourable member is so important. The work being done by Fund Access, by Trust Loans, by the Small Business Development Unit, but that's also linked with the work being done by the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, because I know earlier we talked about the fact that we're the Ministry of Energy and the Ministry of Business, but we also are the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, so we anchor those things all together. And during the course of this year, one of the things that we're quite proud of, and I'm going to ask Mr. Bertram Johnson to get ready to speak, we launched a platform which is called Price Check, which focus on making available to Barbadians prices wherever they were. You can go online and you could be able to put together your items. But we've also been engaging with the Small Business Association to use that existing platform and that technology to have a dedicated directory of all small businesses in country that they have already been working with, to have them onboarded on this platform where Barbadians and others alike are able to go and they can see where small businesses are selling goods in what area, and they can purchase those goods in that space. What we've also sought to do during the course of this last financial year, and we will be following through on it this year, is the payment portal, and that will be done in collaboration with the Barbados Revenue Authority and with the technology service providers. So we are very much looking at moving into that space and that dedicated capability, not just for the CSME, but globally. But a part of that has also been the work of Fund Access and Trust Loans. So how many times have we gone to a pop-up? Or we've gone to a small business pop-up and we see an item, we like an item, we buy an item, but we can't find it afterwards. Or visitors who are coming as tourists to the country, they come to the country, they go to a market, they buy an item, but they go back and they love the item, but they can't find it ever again. That platform is really meant to ensure that you're able to have not just one-time sales, but repeated sales and repeated access to small businesses and their products and their goods and services.
Thank you. Bertram Johnson, Director of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Ministers. Good afternoon, colleagues. It is indeed a privilege to speak this afternoon on Price Check. I just want to say that Price Check got its genesis basically from monitoring the compact program in which government would have said when we was going through a period of uncertainty due to global inflated prices. And out of that, we thought that we would advance government's trust in terms of digitizing services to the public. How do we digitize our services from the Department of Commerce? And hence Price Check was birthed. Price Check is a web-based application which allows us to seamlessly share to the public on a platform called pricecheck.gov.bb the information of the movement of prices every 2 weeks or every month that we capture on 47 essential items, or even on the broader basket, which captures over 300 products. We thought that that intervention would be useful because it gives the citizens and people of Barbados the opportunity to monitor prices across the platform of retail supermarkets, in which we monitor via the Miscellaneous Control Act, in which we have provisions to do such. To date, that has been a tremendous success, as the Minister has stated. To date, my data is showing me personally that we had over 80,000 visitors and 713,000 hits within four months. That's a necessary condition, but it's not a sufficient condition, as the economist will say. And what we sought to do is, how can the Minister say, in terms of your question, Minister, on board of the services, we are working assiduously with the Heart and Stroke Foundation. We can all agree that the national, the NCDs, is something that affects everyone, and how do we work with them to onboard even promoting healthier choices and monitoring the prices of healthier choices on Price Check platform. We are also working with the Small Business Association, as the Minister said, to onboard the online registry of small businesses that you can go to one space and have all that information on the digitized platform of all the small businesses. We are also in consultation with the Trust Loan. We believe that we have many small businesses in Barbados that are doing tremendous job, and we would have saw that through COVID. And how do you promote those persons to make them more effective as entrepreneurs and internationalize them personally, because anyone over the globe now can see their profiles. Price Check now have developed also, and we'll be launching that hopefully next week, a small business page where when you go on to Price Check, there will be a small business page that you will see small businesses and the content and what they're proposing to sell on a digitized platform that anyone using your tablets, your computers can see and have access to that. We think that this is a great move as we try to work with our consumers. But beyond that, Minister, we're also working with our retailers. We believe the way that we capture data now, where our inspectors go around and collect data at supermarket has become anachronistic. I think that's the new modern word that they use. So we're looking now to have point of sale information where we will have the POS information speaking to Price Check, and automatically that be updated. And that speaks to the power of digitization, as the minister is urging us to move towards, which yields to the efficacy and the efficiency and timeliness of providing data to the public. So I will rest there, and if there's any further questions, I will come back. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and let me heartily congratulate you on over 80,000 people checking on Price Check. That is success indeed, and all of this will help to transform Barbados and the Barbadian economy. Thank you, Minister.
Honourable Member for St. John.
Thank you, Chair. 3 youth-related questions. Minister, you mentioned just now in relation to the MESE. My question is, know that I have the youth entrepreneurship scheme within my ministry, but in relation to scale, how is it possible for, Sandra, the mic off? How is it possible for my ministry to engage with yours in relation to working with some of those youngsters who were coming through Project Dawn, 41 businesses? How can we work together to impact that particular grouping?
Thank you, Honourable Member. It's actually very easy to do. I believe the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister has already shown the way forward in that regard, and so with the entrepreneurs who are coming forward now with the road maintenance program, those persons have very much been integrated with the ministry's teams to be able to support the development of how to start a business, how to grow a business. They've had the benefit of the financial literacy program. Under the Ministry of Youth, Community Affairs and Sport, we have not just the YES, but also the Barbados Youth Business Trust, and they also work relatively closely with the ministry, but we are quite amenable to even deeper collaboration between the Fund Access and the Trust Loans Program to be able to build out an even more coherent development to supporting the persons coming out of Project Dawn. I believe the graduation saw a large number of young people interested in coming into business, and certainly with the allocation of financial resources to both Fund Access and Trust Loans in these estimates of expenditure this year, we want to be able to see even more of your graduates, and I want to take the minute to congratulate you on the successful closure of the first phase of that program and the graduation that you held just a few weeks ago.
Thank you, Minister. At least one member in the chamber would be aware that ministries collaborate. My second question to you is in relation to your financial literacy program. There you go, synergies. I'm getting the feedback, I'm not sure why. Minister, the other question is related to financial literacy. You mentioned at the beginning that you were in the primary school and in secondary school. My target population is totally different. Now, I have a digital media program at the ministry, and what I'm hoping for, if possible, is to get the information to my particular target group through WhatsApp. So is it possible that I can have that synergy again between my ministry and yours, where I can have my digital team prepare some small bite-sized videos that I can then send to my target population in relation to financial literacy. Now, I just had, as you just mentioned, and thank you, in excess of 200 individuals graduating from Project Dawn. There's another 250 plus right now at SJPI. But I need to be able to empower them in relation to financial literacy. It is not a case where I can have maybe all of them in a classroom for a kind of lecture setting, but if I can develop small videos with the digital media team, then I can push the information out not only to them, but to other young people in relation to financial literacy. Is it possible that you have, let's say, a set program that can be tweaked, or that we can have some of our own young people providing the information for them to then pass to our other youngsters?
Thank you, Honourable Member. Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me the opportunity to respond. The short answer is yes, absolutely. Since last year, we have actually onboarded under your ministry as well, in a further indication of synergies and collaboration among ministries, the Barbados Youth Advanced Corps in the financial literacy program. And so that has been one of the agencies under your ministry that has been onboarded and a part of the financial literacy program over the last year. And the expectation is that they will remain there. So there is expertise as we speak already in dealing with your demographic group, and we can commit. I'm going to ask the national coordinator for the financial literacy program, Mr. David Simpson, who also is chairman of Fund Access, if he can make his way down and then begin to follow on to answer the question. But in summary, while I spoke about the schools and the 55 schools that we have onboarded, we will be onboarded so far up to September of this year, we also have an online program that would allow you, Honourable Member, to be able to use the technology, whether it is on your phone or it is on the internet, on a given platform, to be able to have the benefit of financial literacy training for your Project Dawn recent graduates and upcoming graduates. But I'm going to ask Mr. David Simpson, who is the national coordinator, to continue on this point, please.
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon, everyone. David Simpson, National Coordinator for the National Financial Literacy Program. To your point, Honourable Member, firstly, the digital content. We are actually currently collating and creating such content to highlight various tips and various skill sets, abilities, several different areas of content for financial education that once complete we can share with your team that you can also replicate. The aim is to take snippets of our online webinar program and other in-person interventions and create short video sequences that can then be utilized to share further information. So I think what you are requesting aligns with a particular project that we're currently building out with our social media coordinator. To Minister's last point, the online webinar component has two segments. There is the bi-monthly webinar, which is done via our Zoom platform and also live stream on Facebook. And that content is then uploaded to the program's YouTube page. Coincidentally, I am scheduled to do one of those sessions this evening. And we usually advertise these via the GIS platform or on social media. And we also are in the progress on an ongoing basis of sharing financial tips via the Nation newspaper and the Business Authority. And we are currently finalizing plans to have those shared on other media, for example, radio stations and other media outlets. The second component of this webinar program is a webinar training series, which will now, to the point earlier on the fund access and Minister's point about the synergies and so on. This program now gives certification. So there are 3 levels: beginner, introductory, intermediate, and advanced. That participants going through that program will have certification at the end, which they can take to present to Trust Fund or to Fund Access to say, I am certified, or my business is certified, having gone through this program, and therefore, I don't want to use the word preferential access, but these agencies will be able to have greater comfort in lending and advancing funds to these persons. The ministry also already has, through this program, a synergy with your program, with your ministry, in terms of the national summer programs, which we held successfully last July, and we're currently planning for August of this year again, where components of financial literacy will be embedded into these national summer camp programs. As you may recall as well, Honourable Member, I have formed and forged a synergy between Fund Access and the National Financial Literacy Program and your ministry in relation to the IAM conference held every year, where we have sessions on financial literacy embedded in that conference. And from the Fund Access point of view, we had a successful pitch program last year for young people, and there are components of that which we are now finalizing in terms of the post-pitch process. We awarded prizes and so on, and now there's a training component that will be activated later this month. So I trust that answers your questions in terms of financial literacy, but also the greater synergy between financial literacy and the business component.
Just if I can, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I do want to take a moment, though, to celebrate the team. It has been a small team, again, just like everything else in this ministry, but they really, when I talked about starting out with 6 schools in particular and scaling up to 55 in the last year, that really has been driven by a team led by Mr. Corey Worrell, who has anchored that outreach, and a very small team around him, the online rollout and the overall management of the program. You just heard from the national coordinator, Mr. David Simpson. And so we're very proud of the rollout in the schools, very proud of the rollout in the National Summer Camp program under flight, very proud also of the Brown Bag series that we have had for public servants at lunchtime. You come, you get a brown bag, and we do financial literacy for public officials as well. And in the online component, we have the webinar series, further to close the loop in response to the Honourable Member's question. It contains the curriculum, it has lesson plans, there are templates, and various activities have been already completed, and they are ready for rollout with the Honourable Member's team and any other teams that are interested or want to be able to come on board.
Thank you, Minister. What Mrs. Simpson said is important for me because, like I said, my particular demographic is a little outside the school system. So if I can have the WhatsApp where everybody is checking, then I think that we can impact some young people. My last question is in relation to jobs in the energy sector. Like I just mentioned, Project Dawn is wide in terms of its training. So I'm wondering if you can identify some areas that I should probably pay some attention to in terms of training up youngsters for that particular sector, because we know that the renewable energy train is moving, and I'm not only talking here, but in the region. If we can do some training to get some youngsters up and running, I would love to know the areas that I can focus on that will provide some employment for some of my young people.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Now, I must tell you that in the energy sector, we have a real challenge with skills in the emerging technologies. Our energy mix at 2016, at 2018, at 2021, and in 2024 has evolved. And we didn't have hydrogen, for example, in 2021. We added hydrogen in 2024. And so the skills in hydrogen don't presently exist. So immediately, that's one of the areas that I spoke about earlier in response to another member's question, where we have a program that we are now going to be looking at to roll out, to scale up the skills in that area. We also do not have a lot of expertise on island in the implementation of battery energy storage systems. That is a new area. In the same way that we had solar PV installers emerge as a small business segment in support of the energy transition, the expectation is that in these new technologies and in the emerging technologies, that there will absolutely be a need for skills to be rolled out. This financial year, under the Smart Energy Fund, We have already developed in collaboration with the financiers of that program, the Inter-American Development Bank, the development of a dedicated training program that will be anchored in support of the Samuel Jackman Prescott Institute, the Barbados Community College, and the University of the West Indies, as well as a continuous training program, continuous professional training program for persons who are already working in the sector but want to have their skills scaled up, or they want to have additional skills in new and emerging areas. And those programs will be available to the demographics all across the country to be able to create opportunities for young people, middle-aged people, older people, but anyone who wants to be able to work in the energy sector, because ultimately, a big part of what we're doing in the energy sector vests itself in local participation. Having communities have the capacity to participate in the ownership of their own assets, our own sun, our own wind, the engagement in all of the emerging technologies, and we want to be able to have locals who are competent, not just business owners, but competent technologists who can themselves then service the energy transition agendas, not just locally, but globally, because Barbados is, in our mind, meant to be the hub for energy transitions and energy transition skills.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Chair, I yield back.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I beg to move that you do not report progress to His Honour the Speaker and beg leave to sit again.
The question is that I do not report progress to His Honour the Speaker and beg for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chairman has reported progress and requests leave to sit again. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 2:45 p.m.
Question is that this Honourable Chairman be suspended until 2:45 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This Honourable Chairman stands suspended until 2:45 p.m.